What is crack-a-lackin', fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Valley coming at you alone for an emergency-ish podcast because it is Sunday. I was not planning on recording. I was at a bridal shower when the Jrue Holiday to the Boston Celtics news broke. Going to podcast anyway after the fact. I debated whether to, and we could get, it's real talk. It's Sunday, so I'm just going to meander around here for a bit. I really wanted to because my schedule gets absurd starting Monday, October 2nd, as does probably everyone's in the business, but mine gets super hectic, more hectic than normal. I just wanted to come home, take an edible, maybe stuff my face and just chill for one last night before really hit the ground running. I've already recorded, I think, like 19 team look-aheads. We're taking a little bit of a beat. We'll get the last 11 out before opening night, but want to let training camp happen, go through all that stuff. But no, we're not going to do that immediately. I will get there hopefully at some point tonight to relaxing and taking my edible. I should have taken the edible and recorded the podcast, but I don't want to give you guys that experience. Oh, again, it's Sunday, so I feel like that should be allowed. Anyway, Jrue Holiday, member of the Boston Celtics. That is not unexpected. Portland rerouting him to Boston for Malcolm Brogdon. Robert Williams III, maybe a little surprising. So much to dig into here. Golden State's 2024 first-round pick that is top 4 protected, and an unprotected 2029 first-round pick. Let's start here. We're going to go into lots of Celtic stuff, but one, the Blazers, I mean, getting a caps lock haul at the moment, and we'll get into that. But we have to start with Boston. They have had one of the most fascinating off seasons to me, and I think probably to everybody. That Kristaps Porzingis move was so polarizing. As anyone who listens to this knows, I'm not a fan of it. I think they sacrificed defensive versatility by getting rid of Marcus Smart. You definitely sacrifice playmaking. Porzingis is notoriously, I don't want to say unavailable, but his health is rickety. And yes, he was fairly healthy ever since he went to Washington, so for about a year and a half. Great. Dealing with plantar fascia stuff already. You extend him. Jrue Holiday kind of makes the Marcus Smart trade more justifiable, or more palatable, I should say, to me. I think it was justifiable beforehand. It's more palatable to me. He doesn't give you as much defensively when you're looking up and down the positional spectrum. He was better defensively overall, though, last year. And so you can look at that, and that ends up being huge. He is going to be extension eligible, and I think he can add up to $200 million in 4 years. He is double-checking his age right now. 33, just turned it in June, so not super ancient, I would expect. And the Celtics, I believe, already come out and said, or the reporting is, they want to keep him long-term, which that makes sense. You paid a crap ton to get him. Not a crap ton, but you paid a lot to get Jrue Holiday. He is a very good plug-and-play offensive player, and I think there's been some divergence from how good he is now because of some of the playoff foibles that he has had. And those are real. Like, he has not shot well in the playoffs really at all, even dating back to Milwaukee's championship push with him. During the regular season, though, this is someone who, when he gets into the lane, defenses are going to react. He can draw coverage. Maybe you don't want him going one-on-one. My dogs are excited about this trade too. We'll shut the door and maybe you cannot hear them. We're just powering through. It's Sunday. We're one taking this. I'm not editing jack shit. He shot really well from 3 since he's been in Milwaukee. And he's even the past 2 seasons, I think, shot like 40% or something on step back threes on like real volume, not like Luka Doncic, James Harden volume, but real volume. And so now you get that creator in there. You get that other passer in there. It alleviates a ton of pressure on, well, Malcolm Brogdon specifically, he's not there anymore, on Jaylen Brown, on Jayson Tatum, on Peyton Pritchard, of course. And so I like the move here, especially in response to that Marcus Smart trade. And so like Derrick White's job is now easier. And like the defense can still be, I still don't view them as versatile, but like just straight up, you're looking at Kristaps Porzingis' rim protection if he doesn't have to move around too much. And then you have Derrick White, Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, and Jrue Holiday on the perimeter. I mean, it's subbing out Jrue Holiday for Marcus Smart. That's still just wild to me. Like, just looking at this straight up. So, and especially because Jrue Holiday, again, in my opinion, was a lot better, or at least noticeably better defensively than Marcus Smart last year. Maybe I'm wrong there. So I like the deal. I understand the deal. There is real risk here, though. I mean, their rotation now, when you stretch 6 deep, so you have Horford, Porzingis, Tatum, Brown, White, and Jrue Holiday. That is a caps lock 6. I don't think you find a better 6-man rotation in the NBA right now, kind of just off the cuff. Denver, after losing Bruce Brown, I don't know if they might have a case depending on how you feel about Christian Brown or maybe Reggie Jackson. He's had a great summer, guys. So yeah, that top 6. But when you're going through the regular season and you need to eat up innings or you need bodies, so now you're looking at Peyton Pritchard. They have O'Shea Brissett is there and Sam Hauser. I guess that's fine. It's not great. And so I'm wondering could this be a Reggie Bullock team? I thought the Bucks would be a Reggie Bullock team. I think they're full up right now and they signed Cameron Payne. So they already kind of entered that tax bill equation there. I wonder if this makes Boston the clubhouse favorites for Bullock. At the same time, it's sort of, well, you have all these, like Jrue Holiday can defend wings. He defends wings. And so maybe he doesn't defend bigs as well as Marcus Smart, but he's going to give you defense at every other spot as well as Marcus Smart. And so are you a Reggie Bullock team, like just to have a body? I think at this point, you probably need to lean more towards a center. And this is what gets super fascinating here. Because look, let's stick with Jrue Holiday for a second. I think the fit is unquestioned. I know some people are down on Drew's offense after watching him in the playoffs. Now you put him in Boston's pecking order, where could he be 4th in a given game, depending on if Kristaps has it going and you have Jaylen Brown and you have Jayson Tatum? That's just, and even if, okay, let's say he is 3rd or he's going to be the point guard, so he has the ball in his hands a lot. Do you consider him number 2? Like, that's just going to make you give more space, time to read and react, to attack, to a Jaylen Brown, to a Kristaps Porzingis. So two of those 3 guys, Jayson Tatum is just defenses are keying in on him. 2 of these 3 guys that are going to benefit exponentially in Jrue Holiday, Jaylen Brown, and Kristaps Porzingis. And it's just like, I think it might be the latter, or Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis. Jrue Holiday is a better, more threatening off the dribble scorer to me than a Marcus Smart from just the outside in. And when you look at him getting into the lane, I think defenses, they at least react like they're more concerned about what he's going to do there. When you look at how they're maybe going to try and force him, to the baseline and just throw a ton of bodies. And now he's kicking out to, by the way, the 2 things that are the difference here that I think are key from Milwaukee is there's just going to be more spacing. So it's more room for him to just sort of maneuver. And like the shooters he's kicking out to, it's Jaylen Brown, it's KP, it's Jayson Tatum. I mean, like sometimes it might be Sam Hauser. Like you didn't have those, you had Brook Lopez and Chris Middleton, and there's Grayson Allen in Milwaukee. But like there's just more bankable shooting on Boston and better spacing, because even if they want to roll with dual bigs and Porzingis and Horford, they're going to be able to play 5 out in those instances. And so I think that makes life a lot easier. And by extension, makes him a lot more make Holiday a lot more effective, both in the regular season and the playoffs. We probably see a tick, like a pullback in his raw numbers. I mean, maybe not, but just looking at having Jaylen Brown, Tatum, and Porzingis, you might see his assists kind of go up if he becomes more of a table setter. I think it's a fantastic fit overall. And I don't know that this is necessarily the lack of depth is a downside. I am still very curious to see what happens with the big man rotation here. And I'm wondering if I misread the situation. Maybe a ton of us misread the situation and should have thought that Robert Williams III was more likely to be moved after the KP deal than it was sort of telegraphed, because we looked at it and it was, all right, KP's making 30 plus million, but Robert Williams will only be making, by the way, and Blazers fans should care about this, 8.5% about the salary cap the next 3 years. That's just wild to me. Doesn't turn 26 until just before the start of the season or later this month or whatever it is. So he's 26 years old, let's just say, going into his age 26 season. That being said, and he's one of the most effective bigs when it comes to having to guard on the outside, but also if you need him to be a straight up rim protector or do you need him to help be the low man there, those are all things that he can do. And so it's a real loss. But if you go back and look at, this is going to be year 6 for RW3. He has never missed fewer than 20 games, I believe. I'm trying to think if I'm messing up the math on one of the shortened seasons, but I believe that was even. So it's at least 18 to 20 games. That's the best he's been available. He's only ever played, if you just want to go, this was an 82 game. Like the most games he's ever played in one season is 2021, 2022. He played in 61 during the regular season, then turned around and played 17 in the playoffs for a total of, my God, math right now, 11. So that's, 79 games at that point. Again, and that was a deep playoff run. They made it to the finals in 2022. So you look at his availability And the fact that they invested in KP, and it was like, should we have seen this coming a little bit more? I don't think so, just because I don't think they made the Marcus Smart trade thinking this was going to be on the table. We know the machinations behind how they almost got Kristaps Porzingis in the first place involved Malcolm Brogdon going to the Clippers. I don't think this was planned. I think this is more of a reaction of, well, holy fuck, look what the Bucks just did. They became the odds makers, and this podcast said it, prohibitive favorites in the East. And Boston's like, well, wait a minute here. And now we have to have a different discussion like that. I don't want to one person this. I still might prefer Milwaukee's ceiling because I don't trust like Boston's just rotational setup. Like something just feels off, but I can't go and criticize Boston's depth without criticizing. Like Milwaukee still has bodies, and so does Boston. But like you can be concerned about both teams. It's Brook Lopez is getting older. Damian Lillard himself is getting older. You know, he's coming off one of the best seasons of his career. Didn't have to play as much. So Giannis coming off at a knee procedure over the offseason. Khris Middleton dealt with knee stuff. So there's concerns at the top for both of them, which is why the East is still just kind of like, for me right now, is Boston, Cleveland, and Milwaukee. And I would expect Boston and Milwaukee now to be better than Cleveland, but I have flirted. I'm not going to lie. I haven't made the picks yet. I flirted with picking Cleveland to come out of the East. That's how high I am on Cleveland and just the developmental arcs of Evan Mobley and Darius Garland still to go. Like those guys are going to get better. I don't like you need to, I think if you're Boston, you need to pick up another big somewhere. You can still do that, or just depth. Like again, Reggie Bullock, they're over the first apron, but he was waived, made less than 12.4 million. They can still get him. That's that, like they can still make a move like that or two, like to sort of just, shift around the roster. But like you're still putting your eggs in. What was interesting about RW3 is the availability wasn't there. I mean, look at the games played. 18, 19, 32. This is regular season. 19, 20, 29. Shortened season, but still 29 games. 2021, another shortened season, still only plays in 52. 61 and 21, 22, and then 35 last year. And so there's the youth element there. But now, like, you're pivoting to, okay, Kristaps Porzingis is not the billboard for availability in most seasons, and he's not as versatile as RW3. And so, like, you've lost two of your most versatile defenders on this row. And you have a ton of versatile defenders, but, like, you lost, like, a ton of versatility. Let's not forget about Grant Williams, another versatile defender. So when you look at Boston, I just find the word is fascinating. I can't be too negative on it anymore because of the Jrue Holiday trade. But you basically traded out, and there are some picks moving around here. Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon, RW3, Grant Williams for Kristaps and Jrue Holiday. And just like, so those are two higher end talents, but now you've made yourself top heavy by default, and you still are probably a little bit less versatile on defense. Now, Joe Mazzulla definitely prefers the offensive model when you look at some of the lineups he was running out last year, even though I still think Grant Williams was woefully underutilized at times. But when you see Sam Hauser in the rotation ahead of him, you also kind of understand like the theory of that as it relates to offensive versatility. So this feels like it might fit more in theme with what Joe Mazzulla wants to do. And I'm assuming him and Brad Stevens are in lockstep here on the vision, especially after these transactions. Kristaps is injury prone. Al Horford is 37. How many minutes do we want Al Horford to play? I think the appeal of having RW3 still was because Al Horford and RW3 were making under $23 million combined. And then on top of Kristaps, like 50 plus million for your full center rotation, like the meats and potatoes of it. That's whatever in the new cap climate. And so you looked at it, at least for me, and said, okay, you're going to get 2 full bigs worth of availability out of this, maybe 1.5 bigs worth of availability. You've now given away that cushion. And again, maybe it's not a huge issue because RW3 wasn't very available himself. And so that's why I'm just wondering if we should have considered him more on the table. I don't know if this makes Boston functionally forget about the odds makers are going to say they're favorites to come out. I haven't looked. They're definitely going to be favorites to come out of the East now. I guess they probably should just because that top 6 is wow. I like the Giannis Dame duo, perhaps more better than any other duo in the league. I think Katie and Booker can give it a run for their money. Tatum and Brown are certainly up there, but I might like the Giannis Damian Lillard duo better than any other duo in the league right now. Jimmy and Bam is of course appealing. I'm leaving off teams here. I mean, Luka and Kyrie, like it's interesting. Like the Giannis Dame duo might be the best duo to me, or at least close. It's like in the top 2 or 3. But like the top 6 in Boston, my God, that is going to be seductive as hell when you're trying to look at to predict and prognosticate what's going to happen in the Eastern Conference. there's real risk here. I will say Boston doesn't just have to kind of look at odds and ends either if they don't want to. They have 2 tradable first round picks still. And so like that's the distant first round pick giving it up. All right, you have that 20, I think they have their 2030 swap going. Oh, it's 2028 swap going to San Antonio. Now that 2029 unprotected pick going to Portland. But you can trade some imminent first. Your own in 2024 and 2026, or you can flip-flop it 25 and 27. It gets a little bit weird because of the matching salary now. What are you gonna move? Derrick White, like Brogdon's gone, Marcus Smart is gone, RW3 is gone. So there's Horford at 10 million. And if you're getting rid of him, it better be to, I guess, upgrade the front court. Peyton Pritchard making 4. Derrick White. I mean, I know you have Jrue Holiday, but if you're gonna get rid of Derrick White, I'd like the return better be just absolutely bonkers. They still have other options here, like things to do. And I think they seem very committed to just paying through the teeth at this point because you have Jaylen Brown is going to kick in on his new extension at 49.7 about as of now in 24-25. You do have Derrick White on the book still for 19.6. Jayson Tatum will be making 34.8. Not this, let's call it this season. We're there this season. So Jayson Tatum's at 34.8 next year. And now you have to not worry, but you have Kristaps. His extension is going to kick in at 29.3. I think it starts at. And then Jrue Holiday, he can be extension eligible, or you're just looking at considering his next salary. I would be kind of shocked if he's making less than he is this season, which is 36.9. And so Boston ends up taking like $2.7 million in additional salary this year. That'll be tacked onto their luxury tax bill. Maybe they get cagey and they wind up moving a Derrick White, or like the Galaxy brain would be, oh, we'd rather pay like $35 million for Jrue Holiday than 49 plus over the years for Jaylen. So you could look at those, but it seems like they're really committed to just paying through the teeth. And so it just wouldn't shock me if they're not done trading first round picks over the next year, because they're very much, it seems, all in on kind of like the core is young enough with Brown and Tatum where you don't have to say it this way. And even Porzingis is an ancient, but just the stuff they've done this offseason, the money they've given out, this feels like a very much, the next 1 to 2 years, like we are just all the way fucking in. So I like the move for Boston. I just still have so many questions. I can't wait to get to our Celtics look ahead. The other end of this, and we'll go to Portland, and then there are going to be some other teams that are impacted by this. I guess the best way to just frame Portland is like, we need to look at, I have it pulled up. Tommy Beer outlined it the best on Twitter. Look at this haul they get. People can look if they're watching on YouTube. The Blazers, they gave up Damian Lillard, and they traded Keon Johnson, Nas Little. They also traded Yusuf Nurkic, by the way, which was a net negative contract. They got back DeAndre Ayton, which maybe another net negative contract. Robert Williams III, one of the best contracts in the league, even with his health questions. Malcolm Brogdon, I don't know what you get for him, but if you hold on to him to the middle of the season, I could see someone, are they like a bottom 7 first rounder or something type deal? I don't know if you definitely get a first round pick for him. If he's healthy at the time, maybe it makes sense to kind of hold on to him. Maybe you're able to get a deal done with the Clippers. But so Ayton, RW3, Malcolm Brogdon, you have the Bucks is unprotected 2029 first round pick. The Celtics is unprotected 2029 first round pick. The Warriors first round pick this year, top 4 protected. Draymond Green's injured at the moment. It's like it's only a 4 to 6 week thing, but there's some dice there. It gets dicey. They're getting a little older. Then you have 2 swaps with the Bucks in 2028 and 2030. That's a haul. And you also got Toumani Camara, who I know if anyone listens to the Suns look ahead, which is still prescient because we talked about Nurkic on the Suns. That's a haul. And just the timeline pod fellas, they really like Toumani Camara. So that's anyone who said, and I'm like, there are a lot of people who said, I think the Heat's offer was best possible offer, because we're never going to truly know what was on the table. I can get rid of this. You all need to see, if you're watching on screen, you want to see my full face right now. I'm in a button down too, coming from a bridal shower, dressing up for no polish on my nails too. Like I really cleaned up, not going to lie. Digressing here. When you're looking at that Heat best possible offer, I do think it was undersold in terms of what it was actually worth. They made it seem like if the Heat went all in and went 3 first round picks, 2 swaps, Tyler Herro, whatever else needed, that it was dog shit. Even Jaime Jaquez in there. I don't think it was dog shit. It's very clear that they had nowhere near the best offer in this, because look at what they were able to do. Yeah, it took 2 parts with the Bucks offer. That's how it works. And it was going to be like that with Miami because of the Tyler Herro factor in there. And so I hope the Miami, and it's not all of them, but I hope the Miami bloggers and podcasters and media who tried to sell us this party line coming from the Heat or whatever. Like, can you admit, like, oh yeah, like you fucked up, like thinking that the Heat had the best offer of that? I saw Barry Jackson frame it as deplorable behavior from the Blazers. I can't, I'll get into more of that eventually, but that piece from Chris Haynes, by the way, he didn't hide where it was sourced from. So that piece was fine. I saw people complaining about it. It's not even just because I'm a Bleacher Report employee. That piece was fine. He made it very clearly he's presenting this from the Dame side of the spectrum. The whole thing was sourced directly to Dame was on it. Giannis was on it. Dame's agent was on it. Let's relax, people. And the whole rescinded Dame wanted to stay in Portland. It was only so he could eventually get to Miami at midseason to potentially make it easier. I think Haynes clarified that on a podcast. We need like the one side, like those pieces are fine. We saw the Woj piece coming out about how Cronin sort of handled it. I think Sean Highkin had the best take on this. I think all sides could have done better. And someone needs to have an inflammatory take or be reactionary or use very strong language. I do it on this podcast all the time. I curse when I get excited. It's not to increase views. So I don't really think cursing and having those takes increases views, but like there needs to be nuance to it. Moral of the story is the Heat didn't have anywhere near the best offer now. And even if it was just between the Heat and the Bucks, like the Bucks just blew what Miami was going to give you out of the water because you have two unprotected first round picks in 29 right now from two teams that are just like, yeah, you trust the Celtics. They have Tatum, but like the Bucks with the age of Lillard and Giannis, like, yeah, if you're going to short futures, you might as well do it. I do think distant Heat first round picks have some more value than people are giving credit to. A lot of the rumblings are now that Pat Riley's eventually going to step aside and we'll see Coach Spoelstra in the front office role. And that could be a material change to the way the organization operates. Again, this offer was just better. And oh, by the way, they're not done. And so when you look at this getting 3 first round picks, the tightest protection on which is top 4 from the Warriors this year, plus 2 swaps, both of which are unprotected, on top of RW3, one of the best contracts in the league, and just a proven super, not even solid, just tremendous defensive player who knows how to play his role on offense. You have Ayton. I don't know if I want to call him a reclamation project, but we're talking about someone who has defended at a level that was pretty friggin' terrifying when you're looking at the Suns' championship run. He's young enough to where you can hope that he, recaptures that. And like, we haven't even factored in Brogdon. There's a chance if you reroute RW3, which the reporting is they won't at the moment. I kind of understand it. I'd prefer RW3 on my team than Ayton, and not just because of the price point. Like their center rotation very beefy right now. Like you could, with the minutes that Robert Williams typically plays in the games he's available, you can get away with it for a season. Maybe try playing 2 of them together and just surround them with a boatload of shooting. Or does a boatload of shooting qualify as Jeremy Grant, Shaden Sharp, and Scoot Henderson? Like, does that qualify? You can just try it at this point. You're not necessarily trying to win. Anyway, love what we've seen from the Blazers when you're looking at a team perspective. Never easy to move on from a franchise icon. The whole Damian Lillard soap opera was very intensely messy, but when the dust has settled, they've really launched. They're using this as a real powerful springboard into a rebuild, and they are so well set up now. They've diversified their picks. Like they're not all coming from one team. You have a pick and 2 swaps from Milwaukee. You have a pick from Golden State, and you have a pick from Boston. Like that's just good diversification. And there's still other moves to be made. I think the Clippers might still be in on Brogdon. I'd prefer Brogdon if I'm the Clippers to James Harden just because of how much of a wild card he is. And Brogdon's more plug and play. Doesn't give you the playmaking or the directionality on ball that James Harden does. Just so much easier to fit in and presumably is going to cost less. On the Blazers front, I would be curious to see what they could. I don't know what teams. I couldn't name one right now. I don't even think the Clippers, it would have to be a heavily protected one, would give up a first round pick for Brogdon. I'm trying to think of a team that would get you there. And I can't come up with one. And so there's a chance if maybe they hold on to it, but I don't know the team offhand. There are teams that he would certainly fit on, but to get a first round pick from, like Toronto, Malcolm Brogdon would be a great fit. They're not giving up a first round pick. So you could probably even talk. Someone got mad in our comments because I guess we cursory. I clipped it, the full podcast. Maybe we didn't explain why Jrue would have been a good fit in Utah. They need like a primary creator, and Jrue would be the closest thing they have on that roster. Plus, they do need more perimeter defense, and he does that as well. So I thought they were a long shot, but he would have been a fantastic fit on the Jazz. Could the Jazz use someone like Malcolm Brogdon? Do you view him as a passing upgrade over what they have? Maybe a defensive upgrade over Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson? Sure. But like, you're not getting even though they have a ton, you're not getting a first round pick from them. And so we could name teams that Brogdon could potentially go to. I just don't know that they're ones at the moment I would bet on giving up a first round pick. RW3 would be interesting because you're not getting first round picks for DeAndre Ayton based off what you were able to get him for at the end of the day. RW3, if you did decide to shop him, would be interesting. He's young enough to where I don't even know if it's worth getting into, but teams that really spring to mind here, I think Oklahoma City, that was mentioned in our Discord. I think they would be a team that would want to wait until they see what they have in Chet. I very much believe Chet is a center, but like you can play Chet and Robert Williams III together, and you would spare center defensive mileage from Chet if you did have RW3 there. They would be a team, and the Pelicans would be my other team where it's like I would love to see him there. I know you'd rather have him. He's proven that he can play with another big as long as that big can space the floor. Zion don't need the spacing. Like they'll figure out a way to make it work. So, and just having his rim protection, I think would be huge for that team. And so those are the two teams that I think stand out the most. If you were trying to consider others, it's never happening. I want to make this clear. I would absolutely love him in San Antonio. And I think the Spurs, based off the fact that they waived Reggie Bullock, it's kind of clear that they're not like they didn't even wait to see if they could trade him. So that would have been salary that they could have used in such a deal. So they would never do it. But Wemby and RW3, like stuff get with Devin Vassell there, like stuff get Jeremy Sohan. That's a really interesting core. I would love that. If I'm the Blazers, I think I want to keep RW3, stagger him and Ayton. I don't want to see too much of them together. Stagger them to hell. Figure out which one is better for you moving forward. But if there are teams that can kind of come in and be like, whoa, okay, like maybe we're willing to give up two low-level firsts for Robert Williams III, like the Pelicans, the Thunder, that'd be interesting. I don't think the Knicks would view him as a big upgrade over Mitchell Robinson. Mitchell Robinson is more durable. He is the better offensive rebounder. Robert Williams III, he's definitely more switchable, and he's a much better passer, especially on the move. But I think Mitchell Robinson's done a better job with his passing in the sense like he's getting an offensive rebound, he's making a quick decision, and he's going to pass it out. And so I'm not saying the Knicks should do it, but I could see people trying to make that case. If you're worried about sort of salary allocations and you want to get a little bit cheaper going from Mitch to RW3, sure. But Mitch's salary, the highest end of it's going to be out of the way after this season, or it's already out of the way. He's at 15.7 and it's only declining from there. So I'm looking at teams. I don't see one coming. Like Dallas would be interesting. Like if you wanted to do Derek Lively and stuff, I just don't know. They seem pretty high on Derek Lively. I don't think, based off what the stuff that Jason Kidd said a while ago about Olivier Maxence Prosper, and based off what Kirk Henderson said during our look ahead, go check out the Mavs look ahead. They have big plans for Omax. I'm not giving up if I have Lively and Rashawn Holmes is there and yourself Dwight Powell. Like that would be a team where if it just cost like if it was Derek Lively and something else plus salary where it wasn't you can trade, I think they're down to a first round pick to trade, or no, they can trade up to two first round picks. They have the Knicks one this year and they have a 2029. So yeah, they can trade one first round pick. It would be because they can do 26 at this point. I'm not doing it for RW3, especially if I'm pairing Derek Lively in there. Maybe you just think, hey, we have Derek Lively, cost controlled center. They would just be a team where I feel like RW3, if he was healthy, would make a huge difference. But do you want to get into sort of the durability questions? RW3 would be kind of fun in Brooklyn, but they have Nick Claxton, who I think is the better all-around player right now, even though he's not as, I don't know what the word is. I want to say girthy, but just like he's not going to be as physical, but I thought he's switchable as hell. He's a pretty good rim protector, especially when he's moving around, and he's the more versatile offense. Well, I don't know if he's more versatile. RW3 is the better passer, but like Nick Claxton can put the ball on the floor and stuff. So like, is that enough of an upgrade? Might be funny with Miami with Bam there. If the Heat were just like, well, we're going to lean into these two big models. I think it'd be a disaster. Neither one of them is a shooter, even though Bam has the mid-range game working for him. I think that's really just looking at it would be it. I mean, Phoenix would love RW3. They just don't have any firsts to give up. Sac doesn't need him. I don't think you want to play him with Sabonis either, even though they could probably use the rim protection. Toronto, they have Jakob Poeltl there. Washington, I mean, that'd be semi-interesting. Just he's better than Daniel Gafford, but why are you giving up value at this point? You're so early in the rebuild. They're not going to do that. You probably make the case that Atlanta, like, let's not go with Okongwu or Clint Capella. We'll just go with RW3. Not a huge fan of that. This was a team I thought of when I was kind of thinking of it on my drive home before I started doing this. Charlotte would be super interesting. Could you imagine him and LaMelo just in the same? I don't even care about anybody else in there. Like, yeah, with PJ Washington, it's fine, and Brandon Miller. Just LaMelo and RW3. You're not going to give up on Mark Williams necessarily. You could afford to have both of them, but what are you giving up then to get RW3? And so they're not a team that's necessarily factoring in there. If Indiana really wanted to fuck shit up, but like they have Miles Turner, so if you play both of them, you could. I just don't know why you would. You have no. Houston did go the Brook Lopez route in free agency, so it's like, would they be interested there? I think Alperen Şengün has a chance to be the better overall player and certainly is already better on offense, but you just signed Jock Landale. Maybe that's something you get involved in the middle of the year, but he would do, if you're not invested in Alperen Şengün as your starting center, that gives you like a real defensive base. If you had Fred VanVleet, Tari Eason, RW3, hell yeah, like you could really, that could get super interesting. That's really it. My two favorite teams would be OKC and New Orleans, and it would have been those two, but shout out to Mike in Discord for pointing out OKC. New Orleans is just a no-brainer. I think maybe some people would be a little skeeved out by the spacing fit there. I just don't want to I spent enough time on it. I don't think they should move him because I think he's better than DeAndre Ayton right now, but Portland is well set up. They're not done making moves here. And just like, if they really wanted to, Anthony Simons is young enough and cheap enough that you don't have to get rid of him. But like, there are players like at the end of this, it won't all be folded into the Dame trade. But if you move Jeremy Grant on this contract at the deadline or after he's trade eligible, and you look at moving Simons, and then between RW3 and Brogdon, like if you were just to look at moving those four players, there's probably still another 4 first-round picks to recoup here, which is just wild. I wouldn't get rid of Simons personally. I think the shooting is actually really important, even if he doesn't get to spend as much time on ball as you would like. I don't think he needs to. He's a great off-ball shooter. That helps open up things for everybody, and that could be very valuable to someone like Scoot. But so let's look at it this way. Jeremy Grant, Malcolm Brogdon, and even RW3. If I set the over-under 2.5 first-round picks from those guys, I'll take the over, like the equivalent. Maybe it's a prospect involved. I'll take the over on those 3. I'm really not sure what to do with the Brogdon thing. I view the Clippers as sort of a team that has potential. Maybe like, does Miami just try? Okay, like we kind of need this stopgap. We're not going to give up Tyler Herro, but do we look at turning the Duncan Robinson salary and stuff into him? That's maybe not. I guess you could divest Kyle Lowry and try and turn him into Malcolm Brogdon, another player. There's not an obvious Malcolm Brogdon team out there, so he's a very useful player, and we could just say like, yeah, you could trade him for. But like, what is the team that is giving up that for him? There, like I already mentioned, Toronto's just not going to give you the value that you want. The Clippers would come closest, but the first are so distant, it'd be tough. And Terrence Mann isn't super young, so even if they were willing to give him up, which I probably wouldn't be if I'm LA, to be honest with you, I guess Chicago could be interesting, but like they have Javon Carter, Alex Caruso, DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine. They're kind of set. Brogdon in Brooklyn, you're not going to get a first round pick out of them, and he's not a caps lock point guard. So I think he could be moved. Don't get me wrong. You put him, tell me Chicago. Yeah, he'll fit there. I mean, Dallas doesn't need him. Like he'd fit really anywhere. It's just, what is the value you're going to get for him? I honestly don't know. So that's where I'm struggling there. Home run here by the Blazers situation. And also shout out to the Blazers. This is the funniest thing in the world. So here's what you did. You took, in the Damian Lillard trade itself, you took Giannis and Damian Lillard off the Miami Heat's trade board, at least for the next year or two. And I think it makes it more likely that Giannis signs an extension. So even if stuff goes wrong with Dame, like the Giannis trade sweepstakes feel more, if you're setting the over-under at 2 years away, I'm taking the over, like the longer on that. It feels more than 2 years away. So they take those two off the board for Miami in one fell swoop while strengthening one of Miami's biggest rivals in the East, and then turn around and then strengthen one of Miami's other biggest rivals in the East. And Miami's just caught here. They operated, we said this on the first trade reaction pod. They acted like a team that very much thought they were going to get Damian Lillard or star X. And I don't think they need to be in the Harden business. I do wonder if that's something they look at now. But this is a rough look for them. It's a terrible look for Philly, and I saw people floating around like maybe there's like a 3-team trade you can work out with the Clippers. Harden goes there and Philly gets Jrue, and he's probably going to come off the books next season. He has the $40 million player option that fits with Philly's cap space plan, and they're still really good. Here's my whole thing with that. If you're the Clippers, I'd rather just have Jrue Holiday. He's a little younger, I believe. We have Harden is entering his age 34 season, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, Harden, yeah, is entering his age 34. Jrue's in his age 33. Slightly younger, better defensively, more plug and play again, and just isn't requesting a trade twice a year or whatever we're up to now on average. So that was just never realistic. This is a big L for Philly. And Joel Embiid tweeted, he tweeted, this offseason has been fun just because Boston and Milwaukee. So you were considered, I think it was fair to say that leading into last postseason, that it was considered Philly, Milwaukee, and Boston. That's not a hot take. Like Miami was almost lost in the play-in, so they didn't belong in that discussion. And so you're Philly, and you're up 3-2 on Boston. Like this is just a few months ago. Now you go into the offseason, Milwaukee adds Damian Lillard, and they're taking a risk there for sure. I think that trade was framed, even maybe a little bit on this podcast improperly, whereas like the Bucks gave up an all-star plus 2 unprotected swaps and unprotected first round. Like they gave up real stuff to get two starters to get Damian Lillard. And one of those starters was an all-star. And then on top of that, you're giving up 2 swaps in the first. That was a real cost to pay. I just think it made a ton of sense. I'm not sure if we communicated that in the framing of it. So aside there. But you watch Damian Lillard's now in Milwaukee. And now Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis are now in Boston, where Boston, it still feels like there's combustibility there. It's not James Harden. Is he going to show up to camp with signs that say Daryl Morey is a liar? Is he going to show up out of shape? Is he going to be in shape but not be playing really well, trying to get his way out of there? This is disastrous for Miami and Philly, who are probably up there with Toronto as the 3 biggest losers of the offseason. Is that fair to say? Who else really? I should go back to our 23 offseason grades and see if anyone's really kind of standing out here. But just by virtue of not even the moves that they made, but the moves that their competitors made, it is a disaster for Toronto, of course, but specifically for Philly and Miami. And so yeah, I mean Charlotte, they had a pretty bad offseason. That's like it. Like those might be the 3 biggest losers of the offseason, and 2 of them are supposed to be like Philly and Miami are definitely 2 of the Philly, Miami, and Toronto are all 3 of the biggest losers of the offseason. This trade makes it look worse. And I don't think Jrue would have been fine in Toronto, but for the spacing they need, I just don't know if the opportunity cost would have elevated them enough. The fact that they apparently don't, I think this was per Michael Grange. I want to missource this, but they're not even talking about an extension with Pascal Siakam is fucking bonkers. So this is just, if you're Miami and you're Philly, like Philly, at least on paper, and even Miami still, they made the final. They say we made the finals with this core. You let 2 rotation players just leave and you didn't replace them. If you want to say Josh Richardson replaces Gabe Vincent, I don't know if I'll listen to you just because Gabe Vincent's going to give you more ball handling. Josh Richardson, I'd probably trust him on defense more, maybe more as an off-ball shooter, but just like you let 2 rotation players leave and you replace them with like Josh Richardson, like that, and Jaime Jaquez, who you think needs to, and the idea of Nikola Jovic. We don't know what's going on in Philly. This is the East right now feels like a 3-team race with all due respect to maybe the Knicks. I think the Knicks will still be good. I think Brooklyn should be pretty good. Maybe there's a team that kind of floors us. Maybe it's Miami or Philly. There's a deal out there that I'm just not factoring in. I think it's a 3-team race between Cleveland, Milwaukee, and Boston. I don't know who we need to pick out of those 3. I think right now, if I had to, I still might mean Milwaukee. And that's rolling a lot of the dice on their base defense. It's just like we have a terrific back line. Boston still has a pretty okay back line. I don't know how durable and versatile it is now, but like you're looking at what they're going to be throwing at you up top is just like Jrue Holiday, Derrick White alone, and then there's Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum there. Holy crap. Depth questions with both Milwaukee and Boston. But here's the thing. When you get to the playoffs, if everyone's healthy, it matters, but it doesn't matter as much beyond your top 6 guys. And Boston's got that shit sewn up. Home run trade for them, even though there's some downside there. I like their team a lot better than I did a few hours ago as I'm recording this podcast, which if you've been listening to me, and I've had to pull back because I think of how forceful I've been since I don't necessarily understand the KP fit as much. I understand a little bit more now. There's risk here. I like their team a lot better. And where I thought Milwaukee was on the unquestionable favorite to come out of the East, I know, and I would have had Cleveland in front of Boston. So it would have been Cleveland and Milwaukee for me. Boston is firmly in that discussion now. And they were never completely out of it, but great. I think great addition by them. You have to applaud what the Blazers did here. The thing I want to note really quickly, if you're listening to the end of this podcast, I saw a lot on Twitter just like, well, like who's going to defend Giannis? Marcus Smart is gone and Robert Williams III is gone. You're not going to have Jrue Holiday do it. I mean, Jrue Holiday would do it. If you ask Jrue Holiday to defend Giannis, he'll do it. Who really is defending Giannis? I mean, it's just like if he becomes a liability in the playoffs, it's normally going to be by sort of a committee effort, and you still have Al Horford floating around up here. Depending on how the Bucks are going to use, like, yeah, you don't want, if they're setting screens using Giannis for Dame at half court, you don't necessarily want Kristaps Porzingis playing those. But like you still have Al Horford and like Kristaps Porzingis if he's going to be playing drop, like you can do that against Giannis still if he's going to be setting the screens. Like, yeah, if you don't, maybe you're not going to switch as much now. And I think based off their personnel, it was clear they weren't going to switch as much, but now Jrue is coming in. So are we going to see, maybe there'll be more of a balance, more some interchangeability between their schemes? You'll have to listen to, I'm sure Steve Jones and Nikias will hit that on the next dunker spot. That's above my intelligence level. But this is just like, who's defending Giannis really is my whole point. It's just when it comes to like, well, man, the Suns gave up their Jokic stopper. The fuck is stop? No one's stopping Jokic. And it's probably easier to stop Giannis than Jokic just because like Giannis isn't that primary ball handler. But like now you have Dame to worry about floating around out there. That job was always going to be harder, verging on impossible to begin with. So if you're trying to assess the damage and losses here, I could see Marcus Smart being this, but like you just got Jrue Holiday back. And so I can't bring myself to care about that element of it. I'm more focused on just the front line in general, looking at the health. And like that still would have been a concern with RW3 anyway. And then I'm also trying to kind of just look at perspective. And I think even Cleveland has all these teams have these questions beyond like their top 6 guys a lot of the times. And when you don't, it's probably because you don't have the top end talent. Like the Knicks are probably the deepest team in the league or close to it. The Pelicans, the deepest team. Pelicans top end talent is Zion, but he can't stay healthy. When you're going to have like enviable, desirable, flat out, I want it depth, it's probably because your top end talent is just not as higher end. And so I think if you go through a lot like Phoenix, even Denver, like we're talking about all these championship contenders, just there do feel like I'm going to throw Cleveland in the inner circle of contenders. It feels like there's 5 of them right now, which is a lot for like the inner circle of contenders. And that's like, you could probably say the Lakers, the Warriors might belong in there. So, but like the 5 inner circle ones right now, the Suns, the Nuggets, the Bucks, the Celtics, I'm throwing the Cavs in there. I'm not sorry. The transactions aren't done. We're going to have Tarabo and Biggs is coming on for the look ahead in a couple weeks for the Blazers. I need to try and get another Blazers person on to like tackle this trade rebuild stuff so that we don't have to focus too much on it with Tara, so we can actually talk about the season that's coming. If you haven't already, please remember to subscribe to this channel if you like podcasts and great NBA content. And we put out a lot of content and we record emergency-ish podcasts on Sundays by ourselves when we're coming from a bridal shower in button downs when we were planning on having edibles and kind of stuffing our face. So subscribe if you haven't already, wherever you get your podcast, links and everything to our merch, our Discord. Go ahead and join that or in the podcast description. I really want to put out this special podcast I did with Caitlin Cooper, which it's evergreen. It's special to me. I had a lot of fun doing it. Hopefully I'll be able to put that out this week if no more news breaks. Join our Discord. We're going to be doing over under soon. We want to get listeners involved. I haven't like put listeners, watchers against Grant and I have to set that up and figure out how we're going to do that, but like join Discord to do that. I think that's probably the easiest thing to do, but we'll throw it out, whatever link I decide to do on YouTube when you want to join and compete against us in the over under. So we have those coming, still 11 look aheads to go. Grant and I think we'll be back Wednesday of this week just to do some, what came out of training camp. I think I have a couple look ahead scheduled this week. We're putting out a lot of content. We will always do in the middle of the season, I would say at minimum 2 episodes a week. Sometimes I'll throw solo in there. I don't know if people like solo podcasts. I don't like recording them, to be honest, but I will do them if people listen to them. And I think mailbags when they're solo are probably the best way to do it. Hopefully you appreciate the solo content though. Just subscribe. That's how you can support the show across all platforms. Recommend us too as well if you haven't done that already. And until next time, and as always, I leave the shout out to the one, the only, the legendary Frank Ntilikina.